Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Follow Your Passion. Let me introduce my guest of today, Jennifer Lieberman. After years of pounding the pavement and knocking on doors with no success or breaking into the entertainment industry, Jennifer decided to take matters in her own hands and created the solo show Year of the Slut. This show proved to be a break, and the play went on to win the Audience Choice Award in New York City and is now the #1 Amazon best-selling novel Year of the What? And was awarded the gold medal at the 2022 Global Book Awards for coming-of-age books and the 2022 IPPI bronze medal for the romance erotica ebooks. Since deciding to make her own break, Lieberman has appeared in over 30 international stage productions, has produced over 40 independent film and theater productions, and has helped over 100 creatives making their own break, doing her coaching and consulting work. She has penned a number of stage and screenplays, and the short films have screened at the festival, the Cannes Court Métrage, among other international festivals. And she's currently gearing up to direct her first feature film. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me, Erwin. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, you got a great biography. If the things I'm already sharing, you know, it's a lot. You haven't been sitting still.
It is a lot, but it's not all at the same time.
Of course not.
I know, but I think creatives, you know, some years you have to work like a regular job, and then some years there's like this influx of more projects than you can handle. You know, it's really, at least for me, it's been a lot of feast or famine. So yeah, but when the work comes in and when the opportunities are there, you just kind of have to jump on them and make the best of it. I remember when I decided to shoot my first short film that I had written called Leash. I had worked with a writing partner on a couple of other projects. This had been written prior to working with somebody else, but I didn't have the confidence to do my own piece yet. Sometimes we can be very precious when it's our first piece and our first piece of writing. Don't be precious, just do it. And then move on to the next one and then the next one. But I remember my colleague said to me, she's like, oh yeah, your short film is going to happen right now because you're too busy to breathe.
Yeah, but talking about, you said, you know, talking about confidence and just doing it. I think it also took a lot of confidence and courage to create your own first story, theater production, right? So yeah. What made you decide to take that leap of faith, so to speak, to start for yourself?
So great question. I had moved to LA. I was working in theater in New York. I was performing. I was running a tiny little theater company in the East Village. I started off as a performer, worked my way up to producer, worked every job from, you know, building sets and learning how to use power tools to doing lighting and sound. And when I moved to LA, I got into an acting class, as actors do. And I met a woman who was doing her own one-woman show, and it was phenomenal. It was called Latina on the Loose, and it was her experience of moving from Brazil to Los Angeles and being a young woman, not really knowing the language, the culture, and, you know, kind of her success story. And I was blown away by how wonderful she was. I offered to help her produce her show. And I said, I don't have any connections here. I don't know anything about the industry in LA, but I know how to produce a play, you know, like inside the theater. I know exactly what to do and I can help you with that. And I don't need to get paid. I think you're so talented. I'm just happy to be a part of this. And that was kind of my first introduction into the one-person show world. I didn't really, I had seen only 2 of them in my time in New York, and I didn't really know much about, because they're a different beast. They're very different than putting on a regular theater production with a cast, because there's so much more that the one actor has to do, and it's usually a story that they've written, and it has to go through quite a bit of development in terms of the writing. And I remember helping her with this and thinking to myself, I will never do one of these because I am not that good. Like, I'm good, but I'm not that good. And a couple months later, I did a creative workshop, and a woman in the workshop, her husband owned an agency in Los Angeles, and she suggested that I write myself a showcase piece that could showcase my writing and showcase my acting, and to kind of tailor it to show my range. So I never thought I was capable of doing something like that. But I also had so much trouble my first kind of year and a half in LA, just trying to get a door open. So I took her advice. I wrote the piece. And when I started writing it, the magic happened. And I just kind of, characters were flowing onto the page and voices. And as I was coming up with their dialogue, accents were coming out of my mouth, and I was starting to sit in kind of the posture of those characters. And I was really shocked at what was coming out of me. And it's amazing because I tell people all the time, like, we all have some sort of magic inside of us, but unless you do something so different from what you've normally been doing, you have no idea how it's going to get unleashed.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So many of us tend to do the same thing over and over again, and we keep getting the same results, thinking I'll just work harder, I'll just try harder, I'll just do more of the same.
Yeah.
And they say, here's your comfort zone, and like the magic is over here. So I went over here.
Yeah. Nice.
And I realized that, wow, I could do this, and I'm much better than I gave myself credit for. But also, until that point in my career, I never had the opportunity to stretch myself in that way. So I ended up playing 10 characters. And if you've ever seen the movie La La Land with Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, she did a one-woman show trying to get people in Hollywood to notice her. Nobody really came. That's kind of what happened with mine. But I realized how fulfilling it was to actually get to do what I moved to LA to do, which was to perform, to write, to basically be the creative person, as opposed to spending all my time trying to get a foot in the door, trying to get someone to notice me, trying to get someone to hire me. And I realized, okay, like maybe nobody of note came to this one, but also plays don't start on Broadway. They start in someone's living room, they start in someone's imagination. Yep. And I realized, okay, there's something here, even if I'm not going to get the industry recognition that I would like, or get the doors open that I would like. This is worthwhile pursuing for my own creative fulfillment. And also, there's nothing worse than being an out of work actor with nothing going on. So working on this didn't take away from my ability to submit to auditions and still try and find the agent and still try and find the manager. But at least now when I meet people, oh, I have a one-woman show that I'm working on and I'm developing. And I continue to develop it. And I did a couple more performances, renditions in Los Angeles, because each time I would do it, I would walk away, I would rewrite it, I would figure out how to make it better, how to make it tighter, how to make the characters more nuanced. And eventually I got into a festival in New York and mind blown, won the Audience Choice Award.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of realized I'm so happy and fulfilled even creating my own small little things on a small scale, that's better use of my time than running around trying to get noticed or trying to, chase Hollywood, as I call it.
Yeah, definitely. And the title of your first play is also very, I would say, controversial, right? It may offend a lot of people, but it can also make a lot of people curious what it's all about, and attract them to the show. Did you choose that title on purpose? Because the title of your novel, it's more child friendly, so to speak.
So I actually had the title first.
Okay.
So when I was going through my first big breakup, my first big heartbreak, which is what the book and show was about, I realized like, oh, wow, I have these desires, but it's hard, I'm not finding the one. And women we're all told, like, you have to wait for the one, and you can't really explore, your sexuality, and you have to be a good girl, and you have to, all of these typical stereotypes.
Yeah.
And I actually started writing some erotic poetry, stewing in my own kind of frustration and desire. So I initially was trying to do a play in Los Angeles. I was with a theater company, and I had pitched a play that was an experimental movement piece to my poetry. And of course, it was LA. In New York City, that would have been phenomenal. But when I was talking to this woman who was giving me these suggestions to do the one-woman show, that was what I pitched her. And she's like, oh, no, you're not in New York City. Like, you need something that's going to be commercial. You need something that's going to draw an audience. And basically, I jokingly said, well, I always thought to myself, maybe like when I'm like, in my 50s or 60s, I'd write a book called Year of the Slut, about my first year after my first big breakup, where I was, kind of confused and ashamed and coming to terms with my own sexual desires and sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, that's your show. That's a great idea. So I had the title first. And then for the show, I chose 5 of these poems that I wanted to do in this experimental movement piece. And I actually wrote the plot around this kind of arc of these 5 poems. So so it started off as Year of the Slut, and especially in New York, I got butts in seats. And that's when you're doing a play, that's number one, who are you doing it for?
Mm-hmm.
So in New York, no problem getting people to come. I attribute the award in New York to the fact that I had this great title, that it was provocative, and people were just super curious about what's this show about. And it's actually a feminist piece about it being okay for women to have some exploration. It's a sex positive piece. And I use the example that if there was a man in his early 20s who had trouble performing, like erectile dysfunction, that would be considered a major medical issue, that there's something wrong with the biology of this human, and we have to get to the bottom of the problem. But nobody talks about female sexual desire being part of a healthy biology for women, because sexuality for women is stigmatized, because we're the ones who get pregnant and have to deal with all the responsibilities, which is why there's this huge controversy going on in the US right now with the Roe versus Wade being overturned. I don't want to get into politics, but this is a very real thing. And I understand that these the stigma is trying to protect women, but at the same time, we got a lot of women confused, and there isn't really an open dialogue about how it's natural and it's healthy, and it's part of it's just part of a normal life. So
Yeah,
that's what I
definitely.
wanted to talk about. And then getting to the book, I initially had the original title on the book, and I got censored and flagged from doing any ads on Amazon and all social media across the board. So the book was dead. I published it. I spent a lot of time, editors, artwork, marketing campaigns, a lot of time, a lot of resources, money, and it was dead in the water. And after about a year of not being able to get it anywhere, publicists turned me down. Nobody wanted to deal with the word slut, even though it's a weapon that's used against women. And it's like, why can't a woman want to have sex? Why can't a woman, be confident in her sexual desire? So a colleague of mine suggested to change the title. I grappled with that decision for another 6 months because I had the title first.
Yeah,
And
of
the
course.
title is why everybody who heard the title, they were like, that would be a great book. Oh my God, I would buy that book. I won't even have to read the jacket. If I saw that title, I'd grab it off the shelf. But also by the time I published it, this was after the whole Me Too issue. And I don't know, the literary world and the censorship on social media is so stringent in terms of not wanting to ruffle anyone's feathers, not wanting to be provocative in any way.
Oh yeah.
So I was rereading Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, as I do every few years. And literally on New Year's Day of 2020, I started reading it around Christmas. On that day, January 1st, 2020, I start reading the chapter about a guy who had a failed book and changed the title. And all it took was changing the title, and it became a huge success. And I was just like,
Yeah.
Okay, universe, I hear you. And that's what I did.
Yeah, nice. And it's what you say, that it's a shame that there's still so much stereotyping and stigmas around sexuality and especially men and women, right? If a man might have had several girlfriends in the early years, he's like an experienced guy. And if a woman has the same, she is considered to be a slut. And that shouldn't be the situation. We're all humans, so and we have desires, and it's
not just
strange.
that. Yeah. And it's also one of those words that's used as a weapon against young women, whether they're promiscuous or not. If somebody wants to attack a woman in their teenage years and 20s, that's a word that's just thrown around, because God forbid a woman actually enjoys sex. God forbid a woman is still single in her 20s and dating and trying to find a partner, whether it's 20s, 30s, 40s, but God forbid, how many partners is too many? Over what span of time? Especially in my parents' generation, okay, fine, people were getting married much younger. Now a lot of females, we want to have an education, we want to have a career, we want to have life experience, we want to live on our own, we don't want to go right from our parents' house to our husband's house. So, if somebody's not getting married until their late 20s or late 30s or even 40s, who's to say? There was that movie, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, and everybody made fun of that character because he was so old and inexperienced. But if it was about a woman, she wouldn't be looked at in that same way. So it's just, so I wanted to open up a dialogue. Sure, I wanted to do a show and show all my acting range and play all these characters, but anything I do, even if it's wrapped up in comedy or silliness or something provocative, I always have some underlying theme that's important to me that I want to put out in the world. That's just the type of artist that I am. I can't really do fluff, even if it seems like fluff on the surface.
Yeah, that's I think that's typical for how you act. So you know, and how you do what you're doing. Actually, you know, it's important to bring some sort of message across. You know, to have something that make people think and wonder, and that's the beauty, I think, of the art you're performing, right? If you would go do some fluff or some comedy, and you might laugh a little bit, but if you can leave the audience with a thought that they take home and they think about it, that's amazing if you're able to do something like that, I guess.
Yes, definitely. And, you know, for example, I was up for a job a few months ago for some sort of like video game simulation for women that simulates, you know, kind of dating or whatever. You know, I guess guys like to shoot things and girls like to, you know, have romance simulation games. I've never played a video game in my life, to be honest with you. So I don't really know what these things are, but it was quite lucrative. It was a very lucrative job. And they sent me a script of what they wanted me to fill in. And I just looked at it and I was like, I don't care how much money they're willing to pay me, you know, because they wanted someone who could write erotica, who could write racy, who could write romance across different levels, like keeping it tame and then going all the way to like 50 Shades of Grey, who could do scripts, you know, and specifically scripts because these are characters who are going to be talking. And I just looked at it and I was just like, I don't care how much money they're willing to pay me. I will jump out of a building if this is the type of work I have to put out. Like, it's just, and somebody else, I'm sure they would love it and it's fun for them and it's great for them and go get those dollars, go do it, but not for me.
Yeah.
I've never been able to work outside of my integrity, and that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important to stick with your own values and to be authentic as well, because they say how you do one thing is how you do anything, right? So if you stick to your core values and your own authenticity, you know, people will appreciate that and value that as well.
And also then you have a clear brand, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and as I understand it correctly, you're now also helping other writers and actors to perform and produce, right?
Yes. So as I said, I started producing. I was running a tiny little theater company in New York City. I worked all the jobs. And then from there, I got into film production. So I got a lot of producing experience when I was quite young, in my early 20s. So by the time I produced my one-woman show, I had a huge resume of producing independent theater, short films, one independent feature film that had won a couple of awards. That's actually when I got the confidence to move to Los Angeles. And it was with my success of the one-woman show after I won that award in New York, I went back and took some business courses because I studied philosophy and English in school, and I was getting close to 30, and I was like, okay, I'm not diverting from my goals and my path, but I do need to learn about marketing, and I need to learn about the business side of things. And I learned about coaching, and there were all these people starting coaching businesses and consulting businesses. And in one of these business classes, they were talking about how everybody's an expert at something. And I was just kind of thinking to myself, like, okay, what am I an expert at? And I'm like, I'm an expert at getting small scale productions made with little to no resources, because that's what I had been doing as a producer all this time. I wasn't producing at Paramount Pictures. I was producing small, low budget indie productions. and doing my own one-woman show and helping that other woman with her one-woman show, I realized I could help a lot of other actors and writers do what I was doing on the level that I was doing it, you know. And they said, in order to help people in this business class, you don't need to be the best in the world. You just need to be about 5 steps ahead of the person that you're going to be helping.
Yeah.
And I realized, wow, I could really offer this. And I'm constantly in an acting class because we call it the gym. When you're an actor, you can't go to the gym and get buff and like have this great bod and 10 years later think you're still going to have it if you don't keep it up.
Yeah.
And acting is a muscle. Having, you know, the emotions accessible and making the interesting choices. So I was thinking to myself, you know, most actors spend a few $100s a month on acting classes. And what if they didn't go to acting class for 3 months? You know, that's close to $1,000. And then they got 2 or 3 other actors from that acting class. And they could pool their resources, or even $1,000 is enough to get a theater for a few, tiny little theater for a few nights and get a show off the ground. And I realized that I could really help other frustrated actors who have so much talent and so much to give, just like I do, but just can't get a door open, or just can't get someone to look at them because they don't have enough on their resume. And so it, you know, I started off thinking I could help people with one-woman shows, but then I realized, well, I can also help them with short films if they have a short film script. You know, I'm talking about a 5-page or a 10-page script, or say they wrote a feature film. Is there a 5 or 10-page scene within that feature film that they can shoot as a standalone, submit it to some festivals, have a calling card, and then at the festival network and say, hey, actually, this is just a small piece of a bigger project. And it gives you something to go on. It puts you out in the world, and work begets work. Nobody cares if you're the one funding it, or you're the one who wrote it, or you're the one producing it. It's not even that nobody cares. It's they give you so much more credit because you're not waiting around for somebody to give you an opportunity or hand you an opportunity, and you're getting experience, and you're working on your craft, and you're getting better with each one that you do. And also with me, I get better with each person that I help. So it just was kind of like this natural progression. So whether it's helping them develop their script idea, or the script's already written, I can consult on it, give them, it's called coverage, give them feedback of, are there holes in the script? Does this work? Does that work? I can let them know what's realistic for the budget that they're trying to do it with. I can help with budgets. I can help people put a team together, pool resources.
Yeah.
All the, you know, so the consulting business, there's so many different aspects of it, because there's so many different stages of production.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's wonderful that you're able to help others as well, because you have all the experience by firsthand. You know how it is. You know how it feels to be frustrated, and to work on something like you said. You know, if you're still applying for a role, at least you can say, you know, I'm working on my one woman show, one man show, or whatever. So at least you're showing initiative. You're showing that you're an action taker, right? And you're not sitting back hoping that somebody will call for you for this main role for Broadway or whatever, of course. So that's beautiful. So of course you've done all the parts that is within a production, right? Is this a particular part or piece that you like the most? Is it the writing? Is it directing? Is it the acting itself? Or is it just the whole combination that makes it marvelous?
So I love acting. I love performance. That's always been my first love, even since I was a child. And I actually started writing, when I started writing scripts, it was because I wanted to play those roles and live in those worlds and tell those stories. As I've, grown up, I do enjoy the writing process. I didn't know if I would enjoy writing a novel because there's no performance aspect attached to it. You write it and then it's finished. There's no, there's no show, so to speak. But I actually realized that I really do enjoy just writing. And there's something very satisfying about writing a novel or a book that's finished. That's not just step one of a 30-step process. I still continue to write theatrically. I have, like you mentioned in the intro, I have a feature film that I'm gearing up to direct. It'll be my first feature film. And I'm also writing a play. I'm working with a partner on a TV pilot. I'm not the type of writer who just works on one thing at a time, because sometimes you need to let it breathe like a good bottle of wine. Sometimes you need to walk away from it for a couple of months, work on something else, and then go back to it. So I'm always working on things simultaneously, but performance is number one. However, I really enjoy producing. And for me, I'm one of those unique people that uses both sides of my brain equally. So I know not every producer has an interest in acting or writing, and not every actor or writer, as much as they wish they could take the reins and be a producer, has that skill set. So I'm so grateful, and I know how fortunate I am that I can flip back and forth from both sides quite easily. So I really do enjoy producing. I feel like getting a script, it's like a big puzzle, and I have to figure out how to dismantle the pieces in order to execute them and then put them back together. And to me, there's something just very exciting and satisfying about that process, because I can also appreciate how the creatives are going to tackle it and how it's going to come to life. So I really do enjoy producing, and it's not something I'm ever going to stop doing. I'm going to continue, whether I'm producing my own work, producing for other people. Like I said, sometimes I get to wear the hat where it's mine. Sometimes I have to, take my creative hat off and spend time, helping other people, working on their productions, paying the bills. And I just feel so fortunate that I am a creative whose side hustle still gets to be in my world of creativity, as opposed to, working in an office, which I've worked in several offices. I've worked in restaurants. I've worked a lot of side hustles over the years. So it's amazing that I've reached a point in my life where everything I do is within that world of creativity.
Yeah, that's what we all should aim for, I guess.
Yeah, and also just being open to different opportunities. I remember when I was with this theater company and the producer left the company for another opportunity, this tiny little company in New York, and the director asked me to produce the next show. And I was 22, and I was like, no, I don't want to be a producer. I want to be on stage. I want to perform. And he said, well, what if you can still be in the show and be a producer? And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't, but I said yes to it. And saying yes to it's like all my success has led to saying yes to a bunch of things that I didn't want to do. So I didn't want to be I didn't want to produce, but then I did it, and I realized, wow, like it was really hard at first. I was young. I didn't know how to deal with the stress. I was not a pleasant person to be around when I was producing, you know, the first couple of shows, because I just was so young and I didn't have the faculties or the experience to handle the stress and handle the pressure and handle being in a new role that I'm stumbling through, figuring out as I go. But that was one of the most invaluable choices that I made. And then years later, a few years later, I auditioned for a feature film, and the director said, well, you know, we're not going to use you as the lead, but we'll have like a small little role for you. And something inside me said, like, just ask him if you can work behind the scenes. And I did. And it turned out that there were a lot of inexperienced people working on that project. It was a low budget, independent film. And by the second day, I was one of the producers on the project, because all of the experience I had producing theater and working through the stress and not knowing what I was doing, I figured out, I can figure it out as I go on this movie, and
Nice.
and had the confidence to delegate and tell people what to do, and, you know, anticipate problems as they were happening or before they were happening. And just like the one-woman show, never thought I would do a one-woman show, never wanted to do a one-woman show, never thought I was good enough. And you never, until you do it, how could, this is the thing. Most of us say no to ourselves before we let the universe tell us no. And so I just started saying yes to everything. And the novel is one example of that. I never thought I was going to write a book. And what do you mean? Why am I going to waste all this time writing a book? That's time I'm not on stage.
Yeah, nice. Nice. So let's talk about a little bit about your this first feature movie you're working on. What's it about?
It's called Longing, and it's about 4 couples in New York City whose relationships are falling apart. And because New York is the type of city that you run into people all of the time, you know, it's millions of people in a very condensed small area. And there's a few chance meetings where one person from each couple runs into their past love of their life, that it just never worked out for some reason. And all of these people are kind of faced with this longing and this desire of, do they stay unhappy in the situation that they're in because of grown-up responsibilities like children and finances and family, or do they take that leap of faith and try and find the love and happiness that they don't have?
Nice.
So,
Do you have a launch date for the?
no, I'm raising funds right now. So I have about half the money raised. And I went to the Cannes Film Festival a couple months ago, and I have the script out to some producers there to see if there's a possible co-production, or so we'll see what happens. I do have some interest. I don't have any contracts signed yet. I don't want to say too much about it.
No, of course not.
But I am planning for a spring of 2023 production. So we'll start shooting in less than a year. That's the plan.
Nice. Well, let's keep our fingers crossed and it will happen.
Thank you.
If you look at the past, the future looks bright.
Yes, well, definitely. And I think that's important for all of us, is to keep moving forward and keep having something to look forward to. You know, when we stop having things to look for, I think that's why COVID was so hard for all of us, because there was no end in sight for quite a while, and we couldn't make plans, and we couldn't, even people getting married or celebrating birthdays or visiting loved ones or going on vacations, all these things that we look forward to, that keep us going, that keep us pushing forward in our lives, because most of us, the day-to-day is a grind. And it's those things that we get to look forward to that, you know, keep us sane, keep us happy. And yeah, so I think that's really important.
Nice. I'm afraid we can talk for hours on those subjects. I'm having a great time, by the way. If you could share a little tip or a little piece of wisdom with the audience, Jennifer, what would it be?
Don't say no to yourself. I feel like we talk ourselves out of things more often than we talk ourselves into things. And studies have shown it comes from like our primitive brain of like, you know, wanting to stay safe. And it's scary. It's definitely scary to take those risks and to, you know, move to Hollywood or move to New York City or take that painting class or that singing class or go to that open mic and play a song that you wrote on the ukulele or do that stand-up comedy. I'm using aspects in the creative world because that's the world I live in. But so many of us have desires and we think we have something inside of us that like, maybe I could do that. But then our primitive brain shuts it down and is like, oh no, why would you do that? Like you can be laughed at. And, you know, what if you fail? And that's my whole thing. What if you fail? So what? You know, people, when I first moved to New York and got into entertainment, love to ask me, how long are you going to give it? You know, they expect like, you're going to give it 5 years or you're going to give it 3 years or, you know, and if you're not this huge success within a certain finite amount of time, then you have to move on and do something else. Well, first of all, it's taken me a lot more than 5 years to get here, number one. And number two, I used to always say, until I don't want to anymore. And I think there's this huge fear-based idea in so many of us. It's okay to try something and decide that it's not for you. But if you have that desire to try it, try it. What's the big deal if it's not for you? What's the big deal? There are even huge stars, like I'll take Russell Brand, for example, the British comedian. He was a big Hollywood star and it wasn't for him. And he left Hollywood and he's doing his own thing now. And I take that example because he's like a recognizable name, but it's okay. It's okay to fail. I'm failing my way to success. It's like my book was a complete failure until I decided to, you know, keep trying and keep at it and change the title and do something different. So that would be my advice. Great advice,
Jennifer. So if people want to know more about you or get in touch or follow you, how can they do that?
So my company, my consulting business is called Make Your Own Break. That's my life philosophy, make your own break. So that's the easiest way to find me. I have websites, a different website for acting, a different website for my novel, but everything is accessible. There are links through Make Your Own Break to get to everything that I do. So that's just the easiest way to find me. And then on social media, I am Jen Lieberman. So the @ and then I am Jen, Lieberman.
Nice. Like I said, Jennifer, I had a great time with you, great conversation. Thank you for being a guest in my show and let's keep in touch.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting and thank you for having me.